Hey there, it's Mackenzie, your host of Winning. We're looking for sponsors for the podcast. If you have a business that you would like to promote to thousands of people, send us an email at podcastwinning@gmail.com or send us a message on social media. I cannot wait to hear from you. Now on to the show.
Winning is your guide to making it in business. Join our award-winning host and entrepreneur, Mackenzie Kilshaw, and special guests in casual conversations that will educate and inspire you on your business journey. Winning will help you learn the hard lessons the easy way with guidance from celebrated entrepreneurs and business leaders. It's fun. It's informative. It's winning.
Hello, welcome to Winning. I'm your host, Mackenzie Kilshaw, and today's guest is Katie Snow. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Mackenzie.
How are you today?
Really good. How are you?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for being on. Katie is the Director of Customer Success and Support at Whisk AI. It's an inventory management for restaurants. She began her career in tech at 7 Shifts, where she spent nearly 5 years helping to build and scale high-performance teams. She's also received multiple awards for leadership and mentoring, which we're going to talk a lot about today. So, Katie, thanks for being here. I'm excited that you're here. Katie and I have worked together, and I feel like we just clicked like the moment we met. So I'm so happy to have you on and hear some of your experiences. But do you want to start with just giving the audience a little bit of an idea of who you are?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for having me, Mackenzie. On a personal front, I'm Katie. I am a mom of 2, wife to Ryan. I live in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan right now, born and raised in New Brunswick, but Saskatchewan's home for my family now. On a more professional front, like Mackenzie said, I'm the Director of Customer Success and Support at Whisk AI. The bulk of my career has been spent in restaurant tech, where I've had the opportunity to build and scale teams across support, onboarding, implementation, and customer growth.
That's a lot, I know, because I lived in that world for a few years in tech and in the customer service area. And I think people don't realize all that goes into tech. It's new. It's not really that new, but it's a newer area. But there's so many things in the tech world that happen behind the scenes, because for most of us, you download an app or you buy a system that you're going to use for your business, whatever it is, you oftentimes don't ever even really know much about the company. You don't know anyone that is there, right? Like you're just kind of sign up and you go for it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly actually what happened with me at 7 Shifts, where I used the app for years, and it didn't even occur to me that there'd be a business behind it until the opportunity was presented to me. So you're right. Yeah, we don't even think about the business behind the app.
Yeah, no, you don't. And you don't realize all of the things that go into that. And really in tech, your primary goal is when someone signs up to keep them, right? That's what you want to do, is to keep them there. Because it's really easy to be like, oh, I don't use this, unsubscribe or whatever it is, right? And it's the keeping them there and then the making them happy and delighted and everything. And that's really where your strengths are.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't think about it when you cancel your Spotify subscription or your Netflix subscription, that there's someone behind the scenes going, no, we worked so hard for this. But yeah, exactly. It's there. That's the world that I live in. Yeah.
So how did you get into the tech world? You kind of mentioned that you used 7 Shifts first, but how did you get where you are?
Yeah, that is a bit of an interesting story. I would say it was divine timing, honestly. I've been working as a restaurant manager for several years, and it was just wearing on me. Honestly, Mackenzie, or anyone who's worked in restaurants knows that, first of all, once you're bit by that restaurant bug, it's really hard to make an exit. But also, the life is just, it's hard. You're not always rewarded really generously on a financial front, for one. It's not lucrative in that way. I was working really long hours. At this point, I had 2 kids, and I'm trying to build my life with my family and my kids and my husband around this schedule that was just really hard to manage. Really long days, really late nights, unpredictability. If I was working at the restaurant and the school called and my son was sick, I'm like, well, I had to find a way to go get him, but how? If I'm the only one at the restaurant, you couldn't just leave. And I found that it was, even though the family that I worked for, they were incredibly supportive. Honestly, I think they afforded me more flexibility and grace than most restaurant operators would, but it was just so hard. And I was struggling financially, personally. Everything was really hard. And so I was looking for an exit. And it seemed like every door that I was approaching was closing. So a friend of mine who had a contact that worked at Seven Shifts and knew that I was just looking for something. I was just looking for an out. Said, hey, I have a friend that works at this company. It's a tech company. It's called Seven Shifts. I don't really know what it does, but this seems like a role that could be a fit for you. I'm like, Seven Shifts? And that was that moment where I'm like, oh, there's a business behind this app that I interact with every day.
Every day.
And
yeah.
It seems crazy, but I ended up, it was just sort of like the perfect combination of events that ended up landing me this role at Seven Shifts. So I started there as a customer support rep. I was like slinging phone calls and live chats. I was on the front lines. And all of a sudden things just really started to fall into place for me. Really, I was being recognized for my strengths. I was being recognized for my ability to solve problems and the way that I could handle these customer escalations and things like that. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been training for. Like all of these doors have been closed on me because I was meant to be here. This was the role that was meant for me. So, I ended up being fortunate enough to be offered several promotions from the time I joined as a CSR, through, like between customer success and onboarding and leading a technical team. And I'm just so thankful for the leaders at Seven Shifts that saw something in me. Like they saw a fire and they saw translatable skills. And because of, like, we're going to talk about the feedback that they offered, and because they were generous with that, they helped me to see my value again and regain some level of confidence. And I realized, okay, all of these things I've been dealing with in the restaurant space are really translatable to tech and to customer growth and experience. So, all that to say, that's how I landed where I am today. Just really great leaders along the way and sort of divine timing with Seven Shifts, I would say.
Yeah, it's really cool that when you look back at it, well, two things I have to say. First of all, the restaurant business, there's no other customer service teacher that's better than the restaurant industry, because you literally face every type of customer service interaction, issue, problem, delight, whatever it is that you could face in the restaurant business, right? I feel like that's the best teacher you could ever have.
Yes. And because people are there in like in retail, you go in, you want to buy something, you want to have a good experience. I mean, you know this from running your store, like people want to have a good shopping experience, but they're not paying for the shopping experience. They're paying for the item. Whereas at a restaurant, you go out for the experience, right? Like you want to celebrate something, or you had a long day and you're going out because you don't want to cook or whatever it is, but like the experience is a huge part of it. So as soon as that experience starts to be derailed, even if it's not your fault as the server, maybe the kitchen's backed up, or maybe you're just out of something, like that wasn't my fault, but I'm the one that has to look the customer dead in the eye and try to make things right with them. So that like real-time experience definitely helped to shape me. It was hard. For sure. I wouldn't love to do it again, but it was worth it.
Yeah. And the thing too is people are really passionate about their food and their experience. So if they love it or hate it, you're going to hear about it, right? Like there's, it's coming out. And if there's a problem, you talked about problem solving skills and how you were recognized for that because you had all of that experience. And that's likely when you said all these other doors were closing, and it was probably very frustrating, deflating, thinking I need to move on, but I can't. And just at that time, here comes this role, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think like people really underestimate. I mean, restaurant professionals it's not a highly regarded position, right? It's something that you just do while you're in school or university, or as a young adult when you're figuring things out. And that's what I wanted it to be for me. But I was having a hard time proving my value to anyone because that was really the only experience I had. And what I wanted to say is like, if you only knew, if you only knew that I had been like a single mom with 2 kids through university and working these hours, and if you only knew the level of like resilience that I've developed or how good I can be in these situations, like if I could somehow show you that, I know you'd see my value. But it was really hard.
Yeah. So how did things change? Let's talk about customer service for a minute. how did things change when you were actually face to face with your customers in the restaurant business, then going to tech where they're not actually I mean, they might be on a phone call, but they're likely more to be on an email or a chat message or something. How did that kind of shift, like how you were dealt with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know what? Until this moment, until you almost just connected some dots for me, because my early days of 7 Shifts, I joined, there was only a few of us on the support team. And then I was reporting into, at the time, the director of support, who was like phenomenal. Anyway, the escalations would come in, really angry customers, frustrated with technical issues, or who knows, like anything under the sun that they were frustrated with, they'd come into us. And I was like eager to talk to them because it felt so easy. And there were others on the team that was like, I don't want to have to email back and forth with this person because like they're upset, or there's no way I'm calling this person. And I can remember being like, put me in, coach. Like it felt so easy to not have to be there in the moment. Like if someone sends you a frustrating email, you've got time. You can write it and rewrite it and you can think about it. Whereas on the spot, you go to check on a table and they're like explosive. You have to react quickly. You better know how to move quick. So I would say really, I just felt like it was a breath of fresh air to be able to sit behind a computer or behind a phone. And that is ultimately what earned me my first promotion as the manager of customer support at 7 Shifts, was I think my ability to deal with those and to help others deal with those issues, like support others when they're like, how do I handle this one? And I would use my experience from the restaurant directly in this role to deal with those.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think too, like you say, it does give you time, because if someone is upset at not you necessarily in the restaurant, but they're taking it out on you because you're the person in front of them, versus an email that you can literally sit back and be like, okay, let me get in this person's head. Like, what are they actually upset about? Or how can I empathize with them? Right. It does give you that ability to kind of craft more of a response, right? Than just be off of the top of your head. I'm a strong believer that customer service is customer service, right? But there's definitely different scenarios. Like if you can handle a bad situation in the restaurant, you can handle it in tech, you can handle it at my clothing store, right? Skills. But it's definitely different ways of doing it, because it's different, similar situations, but really a different environment. Adaptable, right? You have to be adaptable to that new.
Yeah, it's a very translatable skill. That's why they say even like, I don't know if this still stands today, but I can recall a time not too long ago when people said, if someone has McDonald's experience on their resume, like, they've been through the thick of it, like it equips them well for their life of employment. And I think you could say the same about restaurant experience, like someone and I think that's part of the reason that at 7 Shifts and also at Whisk, we have a preference for hiring people who have worked in the restaurant industry. And it works out really well because like 9 times out of 10, they're just incredibly hard workers, because it's like, it feels like this luxury to work in tech after working in the restaurant industry.
Yeah. And you're not working till 2 a.m. or right? Every
like a weekend?
Saturday.
Like, I get to take a weekend. Yeah.
That's the thing. But that also goes back to where you said at the beginning, you were looking for really more like time with your family and the ability to have some flexibility. And that is one great thing about tech, is that it gives you that, right? You're not working on a Saturday night, usually. Sometimes there's things that happen, I guess, but in the restaurant business, you definitely were. So I think that career change, and I know you, so I know how awesome you are at customer service and support, but that career change just seemed to fit you so well. Like, I think you were made for that tech space, really.
Thank you. I like to think so. It does feel like a really good fit.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk a little bit. We mentioned it. We weren't even going to talk about this, but I want to talk a little bit about onboarding, because I think, like you said, and I said too, I'm like, people don't know what happens behind the scenes. So do you want to just give a little bit? And I think we'll talk too about how that can translate to other businesses, but do you want to just give kind of a little bit? What is onboarding, and what do you mean when you say you're onboarding customers? A huge thank you to our sponsor, Just For You Day Spa and Wellness. Just For You is Canada's premier day spa with 5 locations in Alberta and Saskatchewan. The award-winning luxury spa features Leah Reese cosmetics and iconic Betty jewelry that you can also purchase online. Visit www.justforyoudaySpa.com to book your service or to purchase a gift card.
Sure. Yeah. So onboarding, maybe I'll just speak to Whisk in particular and what onboarding looks like for us. So Whisk is an inventory management solution for bar and restaurants. And as you can imagine, inventory is a really heavy, it's a heavy lift. It's really important. It really impacts your bottom line, helps you to understand where your money's going, what kind of stock you've got on hand, where your needs are, and also just whether or not your margin, you're reaching your goals and staying within your margins. But all that to say, implementing a new inventory management system is not easy. And basically what we do at Whisk, when a new customer comes to us and they go through the sales process and they decide, yep, I want to try Whisk as a solution, then what they're going to do is they're going to be passed on to a customer success manager and they're going to do their onboarding. So they're going to do a kickoff call and they're going to say, why are you here? What is it you're struggling with? Do you need to see a variance report, or what is it that you need to see in order to help you get a better handle on your business operations, kind of understand their goals, who the stakeholders are. And then from there, we're going to help them to set a timeline and a plan for implementation. So when do you actually want to get to this point? Like, what's your capacity like right now? If I'm talking to a restaurant and it's like, if it's the middle of July and their patio is open and they've got a summer feature menu and they're, their hotspot in the summer, that's probably when they're working the hardest all year. It's probably not the best time to implement an inventory management solution where you have to go and you have to input every item that exists in your restaurant, right? But we're going to say, what's your capacity like? Who do you have on your team who can be responsible for these things that we need? And then from there, we're going to go about, basically they take the Whisk app on their phone, they go into their beer cage in the back, they're going to start with all their drinks and they're just going to scan all those barcodes. They're going to tell us, what do they have? And they're going to start building their inventory list from there. So what we're doing from an onboarding point is giving them homework. We're saying, okay, go do this and then come back to us and we're going to walk you through what's next. Instead of giving them this like long laundry list of things they have to do before they see value, we're just really locking arms with them and saying, we want to help you see value. We want you to get up and running and see the value so you stay with us. So we're going to walk you through how to do it. So that's really what onboarding is. It's like, here's your homework, go scan your bottles. Let me know when you're done. We'll meet again. And then we're giving them the next thing. Okay, send us your recipes so we can connect things from your point of sale to the ingredients that we know you have in house. And we can start tracking, the cost of your plates and what you're using. So I think that pretty much covers it. Basically, we're working with them until they've got their wheels off the ground. They have an understanding of how to use the tool, training their team on how to use the tool. And once they see that first value, then we're saying, okay, come back and let me know if you're running into any struggles, but I think your team is ready to continue to manage this on your own. I'll check in with you in, maybe 3 months or whatever that cadence looks like with that particular customer.
Yeah. I think I'm a huge believer on systems and implementing systems to help you. And especially now with technology, to think that an app or a computer system or whatever it is can do all of this for you. Like, imagine before they were literally just figuring this out with a pen and paper. Or maybe their margins, maybe not even really figuring it out, right? Maybe
or a huge issue is
guessing.
Yeah, a huge issue is sometimes they feel like those liquor bottles have legs. They're like, there's no way we went through 24 bottles of this liquor. Like in the point of sale, it only says that we use this much, so we're helping to see where that variance is, where, are we over pouring? Are we using an expensive vodka in a cocktail that we should be using the well vodka, helping them to see those trends. And that's a real experience that actually happened this week where customers this doesn't make sense. I did inventory and then we have our point of sale telling us we use this much vodka. What's going on? And it was well, their bartender was knowingly or unknowingly, who knows, but they were substituting the wrong vodka. That cost the restaurant a lot of money because that cocktail is priced based on what the cost of the ingredients is, right? So that's just crushing their margins.
Okay, so I think there's 2 lessons here. The first lesson is that any system that you're having or that if you're looking for a system, check with them if they have an onboarding program, because it's going to make you a lot more successful with the system, right? But also now you can explain to that person, no, this is what's happening, right? And second of all, really how important it is to know your numbers and know your financials. Because I think for a lot of people, you kind of just get rolling in your business and you're like, yep, this is the price, everything's good. And you don't actually ever monitor that. And there are ways to monitor it. Like what? Sure. That's such a cool thing. Yep. I'm not in the restaurant business, but I think if you are and you're listening, you better give Katie, not Katie specifically, but give her a checkout. Yeah, exactly. But it's true. And the whole onboarding, it's really to set the customer up for success, isn't it?
It is. We want to find those quick wins for you so you can see what kind of impact it's going to have in your business, or maybe that it's not going to work in your business, because the reality is sometimes that's how it works too, is you think it's going to be the perfect fit and you start implementing and say, oh, okay, like our point of sale is set up this way. This is our current process and we're not willing to change this. And we can help you figure that out sooner. So you don't pay for the software for, 18 months thinking, why am I not getting value? But like, let's work together. We're on the same team. The onboarding manager and the customer are on the same team.
Yeah, that's great. And I think too, this is translatable to lots of different businesses when you're just talking about customer onboarding, but like you say, it's working with your customers, making sure that everything's going really smoothly in their life or whatever it is, right? Even me in my clothing store, maybe that quote unquote onboarding was helping someone find, what are you looking for? Or dress for a wedding, and helping find something, bringing them alternatives. I mean, they're not necessarily onboarding into a system, but it's onboarding them into your business, which I think translates kind of across a lot of different environments for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, feedback. I really am excited to talk to you about feedback. I will just put this out there. Feedback was never one of my strong suits as an entrepreneur. I always gave feedback. Positive feedback I was really good at, because it's really easy to tell somebody you did a fantastic the way you handled that situation was amazing, whatever. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but giving negative feedback was never one of my strong suits. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this and maybe gain some skills myself on feedback. But let's just start first of all. Why is delivering feedback so important and essential, really? Not just important, but essential.
Yeah. So I think feedback is important for everyone. I think it's a foundation of trust, for one. If you're giving and receiving feedback with someone, typically you're going to feel really comfortable knowing like where you stand with them, whether that's positive, specific praise or constructive feedback. But particularly as a leader, I think one of your key objectives is to develop people. A rising tide raises all boats. So you want to be continuously elevating those around you. So as a leader, especially, you have this responsibility to those around you. And most people, I think we can assume, desire to do good and to reach some mark of success, generally speaking. And we know trust is the foundation of these strong relationships. And in order to build trust, you have to show that you care enough about the other person to put their best interest over your own momentary discomfort. So if we're failing to deliver feedback, it's going to cost that other person. It could cost them anything. It could cost them their job, their relationship, maybe a promotion or a milestone. It could cost them a long list of things, but it's almost always going to cost them more than the slight discomfort that it's going to cost you. So I think for that reason, like giving constructive feedback specifically is just really important in order to develop that trust and respect for you as a leader. And I think we all have shortcomings, right? Like we all fall short. But if someone, specifically a leader, is noticing this shortcoming or something you're doing that's negatively impacting your growth or your relationships, and they're not willing to tell you about it, then you can be sure they care more about themselves than they care about you. They care more about being liked than helping you to grow. So ultimately trust builds trust. We know that the foundation of a strong team is trust. Both with their leader and around them. So I think if you have really strong trust, if you have found a foundation of trust and respect from your team, then it results in improved buy-in, improved collaboration, and better results all around.
For a stronger team. I'm just finishing up. I'm taking a leadership course through Harvard Business School, And this is one of the things we're just working on right now, is that it doesn't matter who's on your team, how smart they are, their educational background, experiences, whatever. If that team doesn't have that trust with each other and with you as the leader, there's just going to be issues. Right? So I love that you talked about that, because I think that is the best way to get your team going in the direction you want them to go, right? And individuals, of course, which build your team. But I agree that trust, if it's not there, you're just going to have problems from the get-go.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. Delivering feedback. Are you what's the best way to do it? I don't know if you're the expert here, so you tell us, but I know that some people are like, oh, you should do it in a group. You should do it one-on-one. You should have, every so often you need to have a meeting for feedback. What really is, I mean, I don't know if there's one way, but what is the best way to deliver feedback?
So good question. I don't think that there is one way set in stone. I think it's your responsibility as a leader, especially to know your people and know what their preferences are. And also just to be human. We don't have to make it such a big thing that it's I'm going into this feedback conversation and I have to execute in this way. It's bringing actually that humanity and humility with you. So in terms of the best method or the best medium for delivering it right now, I mean, I work in a remote world, so the closest I get to face to face is through a Google Meet. But I like just to ask the other person if you have feedback for them. Typically, if I have a new team member join my team, I'll ask them that in their first couple of weeks. How do you like to receive feedback? Because people process things differently. Some people prefer to get it in writing so that they can digest, they can read it a couple times, then we can meet and they can ask questions. Maybe they're a particularly emotional person, and let's face it, people don't want to cry in front of their boss. So maybe that just, if they know that about themselves, then that works. Maybe they prefer face-to-face so that we can talk through it. I think the biggest thing is to know your people, know what they like and what their preferences are. And if you're not sure, just to ask, and saying something like, I've got some feedback I want to share with you. And I'm hoping that I can, that it will provide value for you, that will help you. Because now a good time, if they say yes, sure, face-to-face better, or do you want me just to type it out? Just ask. Yeah. The point is you're just getting the feedback to them. So it doesn't really matter how it's delivered. But then when it actually comes time to deliver that feedback, I think bringing that humanity with us as well, and acknowledging that, I've been in a situation on both ends of giving and receiving feedback where emotion has been really high. And one of the best things that one of my leaders ever did for me was I was having a tough conversation with him, and I was getting really emotional. And because I was getting emotional, I was spending more time focusing on what my face looked like and whether you could tell I was turning red and I was teary than I was actually invested in the conversation. And he had said to me, do you want to just turn our videos off? And it was he just gave me that integrity. He let me keep my integrity intact. We turned our videos off. Then I could just cry through the conversation. I didn't have to worry, but he truly held space. He didn't rush me off the call. He didn't try to say nice things to make me stop crying. And the biggest lesson that I took away from that was I got to leave that conversation with my integrity intact. I got to actually invest in the conversation because I wasn't worried about about him seeing me cry and what I looked like in this total ugly state. But also he just held the space, and I've brought that lesson with me as a leader, and I've tried so hard to pay it forward and acknowledge that when I deliver feedback, the idea is to help the other person. Sometimes they're going to cry. Sometimes they're going to be upset. It's not up to me to control their reaction. It's up to me to be as human as possible and to truly hold space. I think holding space is a buzzword right now. We hold space for this and that, for everything. But what that means in the context of giving feedback is that you're allowing that person to receive it and to digest it however works for them. And you're not rushing them off the call. You're not trying to then, toss in some praise or it's okay, or don't cry, or don't take it personally. No, just hold the space. And if it's an in-person setting, I had heard one time on another podcast, if you're going to be meeting someone in person and it's going to be emotional, make sure there's a bottle of water. Make sure there's a bottle of water, something to take a sip of nearby, because you can hand someone a Kleenex, sure. The last thing I want to do is blow my runny nose in front of someone who's delivering me feedback when I'm already feeling insecure. But taking a sip of water and a moment to breathe and just something to do with your hands can go a long way. So just thinking about those things that allow the other person to just feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's great, really great advice. And the thing too is you don't know how they're going to react. So, and they're going to react how they react. Like there's nothing you can do about that, right? I've had feedback that wasn't even that negative and I got emotional about it. And then I was like in my own head thinking, why am I getting so emotional about like this isn't bad? Why am I getting so like worked up about it, right? So we've all been there. Okay. I feel like for myself, for sure, like I said before, giving positive feedback is a whole heck of a lot easier than having to give someone negative or maybe not so great feedback. So what are some tips or what's some good ways to deliver that feedback? And I mean, if it's negative, it's negative. I don't want to say you have to like make it less negative, but just what are some tips to kind of ease that, I guess for you giving it and maybe for receiving it too.
Yeah. So for giving it, I think the most important thing we kind of already chatted about was just making sure there is a foundation of trust. And there's a book called Radical Candor by Kim Scott that I live and die by. She is the queen of radical candor is defined as caring personally while challenging directly. So if the people you're leading know that you care personally about them, you can challenge them directly and it doesn't seem so disastrous. They know that you have their best interest in mind and it's not a threat. And so you've used the word a couple times now, negative feedback. And I think we have to reframe to just constructive, which is, I mean, same, but different, right? It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can actually be a good thing. It's just constructive. So if the people around you know that you care really deeply about them and that your intention is to help them, that's the first step. It's going to be received a lot better. I have an example of a piece of feedback I had to deliver one time. It was possibly the hardest feedback I've ever had to deliver. And basically the short of it is brought someone new onto a team I was leading. And he just rubbed people the wrong way. They just didn't like him. And at first the feedback was coming into me and I'm like, you guys, like, fine. You don't have to be friends with this person. Like you just have to, we've got to figure this out. We've got to figure out how you can work together. But the feedback just kept rolling in. And I'm like, okay, this is now just a distraction. And this is a waste of time. So I was trying to get them to give this feedback directly. I'm like, if something that he says rubs you the wrong way, tell him. But it was so personal, Mackenzie. It was like, the feedback was literally just, I don't like you. And that is like the hardest. It's very personal. And so this leads me to, two things. One, we never want to start feedback by saying, don't take it personally, because it is personal. It's always personal, right? It's not a personal attack, but it is personal. But anyways, I ended up saying like, pardon?
No, it's just you as yourself. When someone says something to you, even if they're trying to help you, your first kind of thing is to take offense to it because it's like, I didn't do it right or good enough or whatever it is. And that's you personally. So it's understandable for sure.
Yeah. So with this particular person, I ended up like, I went to work and trying to figure out like, how can I give basically. So, but I'm like, okay, how can I go in for the kill? I got to rip the Band-Aid off because this guy's going to self-sabotage basically, because at the end of the day, if you can't collaborate with your team, like it is going to be an issue and it's going to impact your success in the role. So I mustered up the courage. I just asked him if we could chat. I said, I've got some tough feedback to deliver to you and it's going to feel really personal. Is this an okay time? And he's like, yeah, for sure. And I basically said like, your performance is really good. There's no concerns on that front. And I think I did say also, this feedback is hard for me to give to you. And you never want to make it about yourself during feedback, but I did acknowledge because I was like visibly uncomfortable. So I wanted him to know the reason that I look so uncomfortable is because I care that this lands the right way. And it's just hard. So I hope that it lands the right way and we can chat through it if it doesn't. But I basically just said like, I think it's really important that you know how you're being perceived by the team. And I shared some examples of how he typically engaged a lot when he wanted to showcase a win, but he didn't engage a lot when another team member shared a win, or he didn't celebrate others a lot. And it just kind of made him look arrogant. And I'm like, to be honest, like the feedback is just that like, you're not an enjoyable person to work with. That's all there is to it. And the reason this matters is because like it's going to stunt your growth, because a lot of the successes we have as a team come from strong collaboration. You're going to lean on your teammates for support on things. And then I just said, do you know you're being perceived this way? And he was like, no. I was like, I didn't think so. Like, I know your heart. Like, I think you just want to do a good job. And I think it's okay for you to want others around you to know you do a good job. That's human nature. I also want praise and I want people to tell me I'm doing a good job. So like, seriously, no harm, no foul, but what are we going to do about it? And he was like, yeah, like what can we do about it? And Mackenzie, it was like, I feel like within a week it was resolved and there were relationships sort of budding on the team and things were good. And looking back, like I'm so thankful that I put myself in that uncomfortable position for 15, 20 minutes. So I didn't have to move him out of the business, because that's what it was going to result in. It was going to result in a huge loss for him. And it didn't have to, because he just needed to know. Someone needed to tell him, hey, we kind of think you're a jerk and we don't like working with you. Right. And so we saw like an immediate turnaround, and it turns out he is a super likable person. He was just trying really hard to make his mark in the business, and it was going to cost him his job or something to that effect. But he apologized to the team. He came forward and was like, explained the way that he thought he was being perceived and what he was, trying to do within the team. And from there on out, people felt a little bit more comfortable. And as a leader, I gained the respect of the team, that I wasn't going to shy away from it just because they couldn't clearly articulate. But I built that trust. And you know what? It made it easier to go to other people on the team with feedback, because they're like, well, she cares, right? Yeah. Like she's going to tell me if something's off. So
yeah, that's awesome. And I like the way you did that by prefacing it like, this is a really hard conversation for me to have with you, because if you're visibly awkward or uncomfortable, like they're going to pick up on that too. And you don't want it to go sideways right from the beginning. So I think that was a really good approach. Feedback is something too that I've been in roles where there's just like crickets and you have no clue what you're doing or how you're doing. So what happens when you don't give feedback? Like what detriments do you see from that?
When you don't receive feedback?
Yeah. Like, so if you're, if you're the owner of the business and you're not giving your staff feedback or your team feedback, like what can go south for you?
Right. I think you just sort of lose control over growth if you aren't giving feedback. People are probably floundering a little bit, even if they don't show it. They may not be clear on which of their behaviors are helping them versus which are harming them. And there's always something. Like you can, think of any person you've ever worked with. There's always something you can point out that you liked about working with them and something that you didn't love. And if we don't point out those things that we don't love or that aren't beneficial, or even quirks, like everyone has blind spots. And if we're not pointing those out, they're going to perpetuate because they just don't know. Right. So I think you just lose control over like the elevation of your business if you're not regularly giving feedback. And as a business owner, I would care about the amount of time wasted by people trying to figure out, what they're doing well and what they're not doing well. Because if you're not giving them feedback, you better believe like they're thinking about it. Like, am I doing okay? Am I performing okay? Where do I stand with this person? And those are man hours that you don't want to be wasted. So why not just cut to the chase, and be really clear too, really clear about where people stand with you. It's easier for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, where if you didn't have that difficult conversation with that one team member, you likely would have had to let him go, essentially. And just think about that, having to let someone go and hire someone new and bring them on and train them and do all of that. That's a heck of a lot worse to me, more work than just having that conversation, right?
Yes. And the negative impact that has on the team. So I guess you're answering the question better than I am. That is the negative effect. If you don't do it and you have to move someone out of the business, then there's change management. Then other people are shaking in their shoes for the next 3 weeks trying to recover. And, there's always little instances cropping up reminding you that this person was let go. And there's probably capacity issues in the interim while you fill their role. And it's a bit of a blizzard for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. I love all this talk because I'm such a team. Like I love working on a team. I love customer service. Looking back on your career, whether it's customer service or feedback or whatever it is there a most important lesson that you think you learned that you want to share with the audience?
Oh, a couple probably. I think don't be ruinously empathetic. I think as a leader, as a human, we have a tendency to want to be liked, and being liked and being respected are two different things. So when you're faced with a business decision, whether that's around giving feedback, receiving feedback, really anything in terms of, implementation or change management in the business, when you're making decisions, you need to think, am I behaving in a way that caters to me being liked or maybe being respected? And like giving feedback, for example, or even sometimes moving someone out of the business, you're not going to be liked in the short term. I've also been in the position where I've had to let someone go who the team really, really loved, but who was at the end of the day sandbagging the team. And in the short term, they did not like me for that. But in the long term, even people who were extremely upset about it in the beginning, and I had always tried to create an environment where they could come to me, come tell me, like, if you're mad about it, let's tell me. We have to create that open dialogue. And I can remember people being really upset about it and then coming back to me a couple of weeks later and saying, I really respect that decision. Like, I see it now. Now I see, because, I've had to pick up their email threads, or I've had to do this, and like, it's clear. So just really thinking about the difference between being liked and being respected as a leader. And then the other thing, I think, just from like my whole, like from the onset of me working in the restaurant industry to where I am today, something that I would leave listeners with is just that like your grit is never wasted. I definitely felt like I was overworked and under-recognized and underpaid for so long. And I thought, like, I lost all confidence. Like, do I have value to offer someone? And then when I joined 7 Shifts, it was like the bamboo effect. It's like my growth at 10x. I was afforded these opportunities that in the moment, I can remember coming home to my husband and saying, like, I don't deserve this. Like, how have I been offered this? And it was like, no, this is like finally repayment for the hard work that you've put in. Like, you've done the hours, like you've put in the time to learn these skills and to develop this type of value. And now it's just being recognized. So if you are working really hard and you're not getting where you want to go, I think, if you're not planted in the right soil, you're not going to thrive, right? You just have to find that. You have to be planted in the right soil. The grit is not wasted. So like, keep working hard, but also keep looking for that environment where you can have that growth and that opportunity to showcase all the hard work you've put in. So the grit's never wasted.
I love that advice. And I agree. Nothing substitutes that hard work and perseverance, right?
Nothing.
Awesome. Katie, thank you so much for being on. I know people probably want to know a little bit more too. And I know you have a really great LinkedIn page. So is that the best place for them to find you if they want to learn more or reach out?
Yeah, definitely. I would be really happy to connect or to chat or book coffee with anyone that wants to reach out and chat more about anything leadership, mentorship, feedback, especially. So you can find me on LinkedIn for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie, for being on. I had such a blast. This time just flew by. So thank you very much for everyone listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to Winning. Be sure to subscribe to get all of our new episodes. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Post about it on social media and leave a rating and review wherever you listen to Winning. To catch all of the latest from us, you can follow Winning Podcast on Instagram at winning_podcast, Facebook at Winning Podcast, and on Twitter at Winning Pod. Winning was created and is produced by me, Mackenzie Kilshaw. Music created by Summer Furby. Editing by Seth Armstrong. Special thanks to Shauna Foster for voicing our opening. And of course, a huge thank you to this episode's guest. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.